I am definitely going to heckle the last person to still be standing in 60 seconds. That was a lie. I'm totally not heckling anybody. All right, we're running short on time, so I'm going to get started. If you're finding your seat, that's just fine. What you're going to be learning today, most of this information is probably stuff that you've heard before. I'm going to spend about 15 minutes talking about how to get Amazon to promote your books for you. And then we're going to spend about a half hour going over your books. So I'm going to be looking for volunteers from the audience. We're going to put your book right up there on the screen. And we're going to start going over your cover, your blurb, your tagline, and even reviewing your reviews. The purpose of this is for you to see how you can modify a book so that the next time that you launch it, it does really, really well out of the gate and Amazon picks it up and starts selling it for you. So that's our goal. So at NINC, when I gave this talk, not a lot of people knew who I was. Has anybody now who's read one of my books or watched my YouTube channel? Okay, so most people. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the who am I, because you guys mostly know. But the piece that's relevant to this talk is the fact that I used to be a software engineer in San Francisco. And I kind of lucked into this job. I'm self-taught. I don't have a college degree or anything. But I learned how to program for the iPhone and the iPad. And in 2012, they would hire anybody with a pulse if you could program for these devices. And so I ended up working alongside engineers from Stanford, Berkeley, Harvard, who really knew their stuff. And what they were all talking about was something called data science. And at first I had no clue what data science was. But I started going out to lunch with engineers from Amazon, Apple, Google, Fitbit, Pandora, and they were all trying to solve the same problems. How do you use data to figure things out about people? And in the case of Amazon, they wanted to figure out how to sell books. And I realized that if they built an engine that would do this, smart people could feed data into it and get it to do what we wanted. We could get Amazon to sell our books for us. To do this, there's really 4 things that you need to examine. Your cover, your title, your tagline, and your blurb. And that last item on that list there, reviews, that's kind of your report card. So what'll happen is you'll launch a book and maybe you'll get, let's say 20 or 30 reviews. And some of those reviews are good, and some of those reviews are bad. You can learn a ton from those reviews. And that's something we're going to go through in today's talk. So we'll start with the wrong way. I first published in October of 2014. And when I put my novel out, I did this thing that I think all new writers do. I said it was genre bending, which is really just code for I don't know what genre this goes in. So I'm going to show you the cover of my first book, and I want you to yell out what genre you think this is. I heard almost everybody said horror. Somebody said romance. Which I guess there isn't a niche that would cover that. But obviously, horror. I mean, you look at that red font, it looks like the Goosebump novels from the 80s and the 90s. And you've got this super scary werewolf, and you've got this pyramid in the background, and I was thinking, yeah, it's exactly what I wanted. The problem is, I didn't understand that the book I had written was not a horror novel. At all. Sure, I had werewolves, but I wasn't trying to have werewolves murder people and they were, staying away and escaping the werewolves. I had werewolves with superpowers and they were saving the world. So that didn't fit at all with this cover. And after a little bit of research, I realized I had actually written a thriller. And that if I had had a cover that was a little bit more like this, I would have hit the right audience. See, the problem is that the people who would really love this book would not ever, ever pick up a book that looked like a horror novel or had a title like No Such Thing as Werewolves. They wanted thrillers, and in my case, I get into genetics, mythology, archaeology. They want to see a cover where that's spelled out. So if you look at this title here, The Genesis Conspiracy, notice that the I in Genesis is a DNA strand. This whole cover is telling you exactly what you're going to get. And I had failed miserably. So even though I promoted like you wouldn't believe, I always failed to achieve the success with this book that I wanted. And it's got some good reviews. We're up to 236, but it's been out for 3 years now. And the blurb, I think, was probably the best part of what I achieved. If you look at this blurb, you'll see that it reads kind of like a thriller. So that part was why I had as many sales as I did. But if I had put the right cover on this book out of the gate, Amazon would have picked it up and started selling it, and this would have been a top 100 book with no problem. I continued and sort of doubled down on this, where the next 2 books in the series also did not fit in thrillers. They also kind of look like horror. The last one maybe is comedy. I mean, Vampires Don't Sparkle for a title, that's tongue-in-cheek, that's funny, but it's not going to get thriller readers. And so this was kind of my first series. I didn't really know what I was doing. The books were super long, like 120, 130,000 words, and because it wasn't working, I started to reassess. And how I did that was by learning from reviews. Now, the review that I'm going to show is actually from my latest release, TechMage. And I think it's important because it's going to show you the difference between audiences. So, as you can see, this is a 2-star review. Hermione Granger in space, kind of a dud for me. I guess I'm not a fan of magic, spells, and dragons. What's happening here is that my cover, as you'll see in a couple of slides, is aimed firmly at the military science fiction market. Yes, there are dragons on the cover, but the people who are going to love this are military science fiction. But military science fiction readers are very, very different from fantasy readers. Fantasy readers will give you time. You can have some magic happen and use some mumbo jumbo, and as long as you kind of explain it by the end, they'll be all right with it. They'll sort of suspend their disbelief. But military science fiction readers will not. They want that answer immediately, and if there's not enough of it, they'll run out of patience and they'll move on to the next book. So that left me with a difficult choice. Do I remove the book from military science fiction and remove, therefore, the reviews that I'm getting that are bad, or do I leave it there and keep getting my sales? I decided to leave it there, and that's because of reviews like this. In roughly equal quantities, I have people saying, your book sucks and I don't like magic. But from that same crowd of people who love military science fiction and don't read fantasy, I have reviews like this. We're like, wow, this is great, I love it, so I'm going to keep reading your books. So even though this is lowering the average on TechMage, I've left it in categories that it doesn't necessarily belong in, just because it is converting those readers and bringing in new people. And I only know that that's the case because I studied the reviews. I looked at these patterns. Rather than looking at a 2-star review and cringing and going and getting a shot of whiskey, I looked at this 2-star review and I got real curious, real interested. What could I learn about my writing? And I've learned about plot problems, I've learned about issues that I have with my characterization and exposition, all sorts of things. Most of my development as a writer in the last 3 years has come about as a result of reading reviews and seeing what people have to say. So that's a quick look at the wrong way of doing things. I've now launched 13 novels and 26 books total, and have learned a lot more about how to do it the right way. And I still screw up, not every release is good, but fortunately this last one did really, really well. So this is the cover for my latest novel, TechMage. And as you can see, it's got that beautiful saturated blue. If you look at the thumbnail, and that is by far and away the most important view of your book cover, you can still see that it's a guy hovering in space in power armor. There are dragons underneath him, and you can read the title. So when people look at this, there's 12 books on the front page of the category this is in. They can tell just from looking at the image what this book is about, and that's reinforced by the title. TechMage, technology, magic. No ambiguity here. The author name matches my branding from previous military science fiction novels, so people were easily able to identify that this was exactly what I had written. I took it a little bit further and I approached this launch differently than I had done any other launch. Being a big data guy, I really wanted to find out what's the best blurb and the best tagline and what converts the best. And ideally, we would have an A/B system where Amazon would let us have multiple product pages and they would keep showing and they would figure this out for us. But since they don't, I had to do it on my own. And how I kind of cheated is every day during the pre-order period of about 3 weeks, I would run ads. These were all Facebook ads because Facebook has much better reporting than AMS, and it was the reporting that I needed. what I learned is if you test a whole bunch of different taglines, every one of the ads that has one of these taglines is going to have a different CPC, cost per click. So I looked at the taglines that were performing really well, and I looked at the blurbs that were performing really well in these ads, and then I modified my page every single day. So this tagline that you see here, this was probably the 7th one that I worked on. And the other 6 would all spend about a day on this page, and I just sort of tracked over time, how are my sales doing? How is this conversion happening? What are people liking? So that by the time this book went live on day 1, I had a blurb and I had a tagline that I knew would convert. So now I've got the cover, the title, the tagline, and the blurb. And this is what happens. So the dollar amount here is not terribly impressive compared to some of the people in the audience. I know people sitting here are looking at like, wow, if I got that, I would have to quit and go do something else for a living. I know people are getting $30,000 months with some of their releases depending on genre. But what's important here is not the dollar amount, it is the curve. So if you look at the first part of that curve, I was pushing the book through advertising and through mailing list swaps until September 24th. Then I stopped. And you'll notice that after September 24th, the book just keeps rising. It's going up and up and up, and every day is more revenue than the last. And this keeps going until about October 5th. I didn't do any of that. That is all 100% Amazon. Amazon is the one out there promoting my book for me because what I did is I fed in the correct data. I showed it a whole bunch of what I thought would be the right readers. It converted well because I had done everything right. And then they showed it to a whole bunch more readers. And because it was converting, they continued to show it. This is an example of what happens when you do it wrong. So if you look at that first book up there, Behind the Lines, and the second one there, Hold the Line, they came out within a week of each other. So I started promoting the book, the first book, Behind the Lines, on May 1st. And I pushed it all the way until the 11th, which was the release date for the second book. I tried that fast release thing. I was putting out 2 books in a row. And what could have happened if I had done everything correctly is when you see that big peak, it would have just kept going up from there. If Amazon was promoting this book for me, that's what would have happened. Since I screwed up the cover, and you can tell looking at this, I imagine in the back row especially, you have no idea what's on that cover. You maybe can read a little bit of the title, but it's too busy, there's too much going on, there's not enough contrast. I screwed that cover up badly, and I paid the price. And I learned from it. So how exactly is Amazon promoting your book? Well, they do that in a couple of different ways. The first way is by sending out emails that look just like this. And the people that will receive these emails are one of 3 types. They are people who said they like you as an author, people that said they like a specific genre that your book happens to be in, or people who didn't say that, but Amazon thinks, oh, you'll probably like this. And they sent out, let's say, maybe 20 emails. And if 6 people in those 20 buy, then your conversion is high. They're measuring this, and they'll send another burst of emails. If your conversion is low, they'll send a smaller batch of emails. And if it continues to fall, they'll just stop promoting your book entirely. But if it does well, like think, Andy Weir's The Martian, that's exactly what happened with him. They'll just keep promoting and promoting and promoting until they've saturated your entire audience or what they think your audience is. And they'll typically do this for as long as they can, as long as it's profitable, until there's enough new content to replace you. So in some genres like romance, they might only go for 3 weeks. In some genres like action and adventure, you might get like 6 or 8 weeks. It really depends on what you're writing in. And the more you write it, the more you'll start figuring out where your cliff is. Is it 30 days? Is it 60 days? Or somewhere in between. And that's important to know, but the only way to find out is by launching a novel that does everything right. And you do that by practicing. Now there's one other way that you are getting a ton of sales, and that's through the also bought effect. And this is something I think everybody's familiar with, but we kind of tend to look at it backwards. We look at our own also bots, and that is important because it's measuring the health kind of our ecosystem around our books. If you're seeing cookbooks on your military science fiction, obviously there's a problem. So it is important to look at your own also bots. But what really matters is the also bots of other books that are similar to yours. And you'll notice here, this is Space Knight. Sam, are you here? Author of Space Knight? We get you to stand up, Sam? All right. So guys, this is Sam Green. This is the author of Space Knight, which is very, very similar to TechMage. And what happened, his book came out right around the same time mine did. And Amazon, all on their own, I didn't try to target his book. I didn't even know at first that it existed. They decided, oh, these two books look like they're similar. We're going to show Sam's fans Chris's book. And if they buy it, it's going to start moving up those also bots. And for a lot of my launch window, I was Sam's #1 also bot, which means every time somebody came to Sam's books page, if they finished reading his book and were looking for something similar, I was the one they bought. And Sam's book, Space Knight, is just one of probably several hundred where my book is on the first page of those also bots. Now, does anybody in the audience use AMS ads? Okay, so probably half the room. We're paying to get a smaller ad underneath the also bots. Also bots are free. If you get this right, you're going to get far more impact and far more power than you would see from AMS ads, and you're not going to pay a dime for it past your initial launch push. So the message, the takeaway I would like you guys to walk out of here with is don't worry about advertising. Don't worry about mailing lists. Don't worry about any of this other stuff until you have mastered your cover, your title, your blurb, and your tagline. And the way that you do that is what we're about to do here today. We're going to get your books up on the screen, and we're going to take a look at them, and we're going to crowdsource this. So I recommend doing this in Facebook groups since it's hard to get best-selling authors into a room. But we're fortunate enough here today that in several genres, we have some of the top sellers in the world. And these people are not top sellers by accident. They can tell you exactly what it is that they think is wrong with your book, and we can try and fix it. So this is where the scary part comes in. I'm going to need some volunteers from the audience, and we're going to start by genre. So if you write space opera, military science fiction, or space fantasy in any flavor, and you want us to look at your book, please raise your hand. Okay. Get the fan hands going out. Try to decide who to pick. All right, Ira, I'm going to pick you to start with. You don't necessarily need to come up here, but you do need to give me a title of a book.
Star Stuff.
Star Stuff. So we're going to look up Star Stuff real quick here. Okay, Star Stuff.
All one word. Sorry.
That's important, by the way, just knowing that. So if you say Star Stuff, and people search for Star Stuff, what comes up? All right. Well, you're in good company, at least. There we go. Is this the book?
That's it.
All right, let's wait for the product page to load, then I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see it in the back there. Wow, this internet rocks.
It's an all-white cover. It's cool.
That's inventive. Okay, so we can see it loading now. You guys can get a look at that cover. We can also see the tagline. We'll scroll down just a little bit, and we're going to expand that blurb. So let's take a look just at this, what we see on the screen. That's the first paragraph, the tagline, and the cover. And this is where, those of you who have sold a lot of military science fiction, space opera, are going to earn your keep today. Do we have any authors in the room, I know a few of you, that have earned 6 figures in any year selling military science fiction or space opera? Okay, if you meet that criteria, I would like to hear from you on what you think could be changed on this book. Do you see any problems with the cover? Why don't we start there? Any volunteers? Richard?
Hey, how you doing?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Richard Fox. No relation.
Hi, everybody. Hi, where are you? Tom, how you doing? All right. Okay, so I'm Richard Fox. I wrote the Everwar Saga, a couple other series, and won the Dragon Award a couple months ago. And so let's talk about Star Stuff. So I look at this and I see the artist. Is that Edwards?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. That the artist's name is Edwards. He is all over the military sci-fi space opera genre. So any reader who looks at that cover will recognize that art, and they know that is the kind of story that is going to be in space opera, military sci-fi. So good choice on the artist. He's also really hard to get because everyone loves him. Okay. So now we're looking here, and one boy must cross the galaxy to save the father he never knew. Good, because that hits on the hero's journey, which I love, and everyone is wired to love the hero's journey. So, but we get the boy, and he's down there, and you almost miss him. You can see him on the bottom. He's up on top of Ira's name. So we're getting space battle, and then we're getting hero's journey. We barely see the main character, the character there. And if we had the chance to get more of the boy on the cover, so that way the reader knows here's who you're focusing on, because the story focuses on the boy, but here we're seeing space pew pew. Okay, so I would bring up the boy, so that way the reader sees this is the person going on that journey. That's the person who they're going to latch onto. Okay, and Patrick longs for a life outside his simple orphanage. Good, orphans are always awesome unless you are one. Okay. On his backwater world, technology is shunned. Good. Even talking with his friends about the science of sperm-based technology. But I would drop that sentence as you've established where you already are. So if you put in more detail, it's more for people to process, and people start like, I'm just going to look at another one. So the fewer words on your blurb, the better. So I would drop that one sentence there. But when Patrick sleeps at night and dreams, he receives lessons from the most famous scientist. The phrase was his father. Good, because that gives to mystery, and that's that's the spark that starts the adventure for Patrick. Okay. Is there more? Can we scroll down, please?
I can.
Okay. Okay. Too many paragraphs. Where is the expert? Where's Brian Cohen? That is the man. Okay, Brian Cohen. He did my first blurb for my book that got me to be a full-time author, and he gives away too much for free. So,
hey Brian, you want to give away some stuff for free?
Brian Cohen has an excellent format. So if you can drop a paragraph or two, you'll be that much better. And I love their call to action. Then restart stuff today for a journey you'll never forget. Excellent. Okay. And so that's good. And I would encourage you to look at Brian Cohen's stuff. It's excellent and well worth it.
Thank you very much, Ruby. So you're starting to see here, hopefully, how this process works. Now, I want you to imagine that you are part of a Facebook group and you have 25 Richard Foxes. That's the goal, because you want them to be able to shred every part of this book. And as long as you have a thick skin, you can learn a lot and you can improve it. Now, the next step after this, he's gotten some advice. I would get him some more advice on the changes so he can make. Speaking of Tom Edwards, by the way, he does layers, so he can just make the kid bigger. Might be, yeah, and he'll do it for free probably. You tell him I said that. I'm going to scroll back up to the top here. So you guys can already see some of the stuff that could potentially be changed. Ira was maybe not the best first example because he did a lot of stuff right. We've gotten people at some of the other conferences that have done where there was a lot more wrong with it. One thing I would add, I'm not sure that font on the cover is doing you enough favors. The color might be something that you want to change. Now, I can't say that for sure. What I'd recommend doing is getting 3 different versions of this made, and then running some Facebook ads, running to some reader forums, and asking people what they think. And if you already have a mailing list, even better. Shoot them an email and say, hey guys, this is my next book, this is what the cover looks like, this is kind of what I'm doing with it, and sort of the blurb that I'm putting together. And let your readers tell you. I mean, Michael Anderle has proven that if you lean on your readers, they're going to make your work far, far better than it otherwise would be. So, Ira, before we move on from your book, did you have any more questions you want answered? All right, let's get this mic over to Michael Cooper. So, for those that don't know Michael, well, everybody knows Michael Cooper. All right, perfect.
And then I'm OCD, so this is like driving me nuts, man. So if you don't do this like next slide, it's going to hack your account. You got 2 spaces after all the paragraphs. So if you go with the shrink it up to so I have to read more look again. I'm sorry, what happened with the room? We're like, go things so see more look. Let's scroll down and if you hit like read less or something like that. Can you do that?
Yeah, I can do that. I think.
Yeah, so if you scroll back up again now, you've wasted an entire 2 lines of text that you can show to the user. A lot of people, I see so many people are doing this, stop doing this, and hack all of your accounts and change it. So yeah, that was the thing I recommend. And you can also italicize. And there's some people that have actually figured it out, and I have too, and that's why I'm out, to actually use like H2 tags and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's actually how I got 2 spaces.
Oh, so you did.
HTML tags are off.
Yeah, that's something you really want to fix. And the best way to do is actually do it in Offer Central. And then your changes happen in 5 minutes. And then when you get one of those the way you want, then you'll put that into case.
Good point, Michael. Thank you very much. So what Michael's pointing out is referred to as above the fold. This area here that you're seeing, this is all the real estate you have to work with, and it's part of why your tagline and your first sentence are so critical, because this is what people are going to see, and they're going to make a decision based on this. Clicking on the read more will only happen if your tagline and your blurb are interesting enough to get them to do so. So that extra line of text gives you a little more real estate you can use with people. Jay, did you have a comment? So Jay Falconer, ladies and gentlemen. Love the shirt, by the way. It says "Got Animal."
One thing I would suggest is you've got some real estate you're not using that I would change, and that is the name of the trilogy. Because you're just repeating the same word. If possibly you could put another keyword into your series name, it would help. And I would shorten the tagline. I think shorter, more powerful tagline would help. You've got 5 words or so that catch someone's attention.
I would completely agree on both counts, especially the tagline. Okay. So for the tagline, Ira, I would get the fact that it's an orphan in there. So instead of one boy, find a way to make that orphan maybe. And crossing the galaxy, it's good, but it's long, and there's probably a 1 or a 2 word way for you to say that. And then finally, the father that he never knew, that is really, really important to the plot. So if you can in some way say, this kid is an orphan, and he's on a quest to find his father, you've told people exactly what kind of story they're going to get, and that's what's going to get people to read further. So what I do is try to make like 15 different versions of this, run it by your author friends, and see what they think, and then start testing it in ads. And you are going to find a winning combination. Okay, so it looks like we've got about 12 minutes left, which means I can probably do 1 to 2 more books. I'd like to venture outside of military science fiction space opera. So I want to see a show of hands in the audience based on genre. How many people are romance writers? Raise your hand. Okay, a lot of those. Thriller? Few of those. Mystery? Few of those. All right, looks like romance probably is going to win. So I need a volunteer from romance. Okay, I see hands going up. Teresa, do you want your book? Okay, great. Let's get it up on the screen. So Teresa, what's the name of the book?
The Baron in Bath.
Okay, and that's Bath with an E?
No, B-A-T-H.
Like so?
Yes. That's it.
All right, so which one of these did you want to look at?
First one.
There we go. So we've got the cover up there. You guys can see the title, the series name, and the blurb. Does anybody who currently writes romance and feels they're fairly successful at it want to take a crack at some things they think we could modify to improve this presentation? Yes. Let me get you a microphone. Here you go.
Thank you. I'm Bonnie Paulson. I've written sweet romance and westerns and yeah. Okay. So, Isabel, where are you? Isabella? Okay, let me talk. Oh yeah. Okay. We've done some work together. I would say your font is gorgeous, but I can't see it. And that's on a big version, so I can't imagine what the thumbnail looks like. Your title, honestly, how that looks up there, I'm like, nope, I would not even pick that up, and I'm actually a reader of this genre. Why wouldn't I pick it up? That's a good question. Okay, because The Baron in Bath, Miss Julia. The Baron in Bath, Miss Julia is not on the book cover. It just says The Baron in Bath. I think that's what it says. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's really hard to see. There's a lot on there that you can't see, that you really can't see. Yeah, you can't. There's Miss Julia Bellevue should be on the cover if it's part of your title, right? I would assume. A Regency romance novel is not your series name. It just looks like you're trying to pack keywords in there. But The Heart of a Gentleman, book 4, which I'm assuming is your series name, that would actually look really lovely on your cover, nice and big across the top. And with this genre, I think pink, like a salmony pink. Where's my cover designer? Salmony pink would look good. Yeah, the whites and the pastels for this genre would look really nice. But you need to have a nice bold font, and it needs to be really, it needs to pop, because that's what your readers are looking for. The picture's nice, it's just, everything's blending. I can't tell if the words are part of her undergarments that I can see, or his crap. I don't know what's going on, but maybe, maybe mix up your font a little bit. What font would you think with that? Yeah, not script. Yes, thank you. I can't read that, but it would.
Talk to me about the tagline.
Tagline says, surrounded by rumor, betrothed to a rake. Well, that doesn't really tell me much about her. Is she the daughter of someone who's not very wealthy? Is she, one of those girls who are lower in society? Why is he a rake? The next line I like, caught between two brothers, how will she ever find love? Now that is a trope I can get behind. But the other one is not really, what's the rumor? Is she a whore? Do her friends think she's a whore? Does her mother think she's a whore? I know her mother-in-law's going to, but we all have that one, right? Okay. Or is it just me? So I would say caught between two brothers if I was going to do it. That would be nice and bold. I would not put over 300 pages. I don't care. If it's going to catch me, I'm going to like it whether it's 50 pages or 5,000. But I would get rid of the top line. Maybe put that at the bottom. I don't know if the rest of her blurb looks like.
So I'd agree on the tagline. A general format that you're going to want to see is X, your protagonist, and then something they're going through. So X, let's describe the protagonist in 1 or 2 words, is caught between two brothers. That tells you the basic situation. So the goal of your tagline, and I think this is somewhat genre independent, is to make it clear what the general thrust of the book is about. You probably could get away with deleting just that entire first surrounded by rumor line and replacing it with the modified version of the next line. So let's take a look. We're going to go down a little bit on the page, and we'll see what else we have for the blurb. Okay, I would love to have another author come up and take a crack at this one. Any romance authors want to take a look at the blurb? Anybody? Okay, I guess it's me. So it is definitely a little bit too long. Now, one of the things about blurbs that will, to an extent, work, as long as you front load your best information and you get them interested, having a longer blurb in and of itself is not bad. If you look at the blurb for something like Jurassic Park, it goes on for like 9 pages. So in and of itself, a long blurb isn't bad, but what's really critical is that first couple of paragraphs has to grab the reader. And we're looking at Miss Julia Bellevue has never been fond of high society, and if possible, society is even less fond of Miss Julia Bellevue. You could probably shorten that down into society is not fond of Miss Julia Bellevue. And that's going to intrigue the reader a little bit, like they're going to wonder why. Why are they not fond of her? And as long as you immediately explain what that is and start setting up the stakes and the conflict, you're going to get people to keep reading that blurb. So the best way, I think, to fix this blurb is to find a group of romance readers willing to do exactly what just happened and just shred it. And yeah, it's painful. It is really painful to listen to your baby that you put up there get shredded, but it does increase sales once you get these things fixed. So just to recap, and I think this is the most important part. The cover, the artwork I think is great.
If it doesn't have sex in it, does it have sex in
Well, is it clean?
it? Yes.
Okay, so it is clean.
That's what
Yeah,
it
that was my assumption just from seeing the cover, that this would be clean romance. Okay, and assuming that that's the case, I do think your artwork was just fine, but our huge issue here is that it's not possible really to read the title in a thumbnail. Now, I can read your author name, so perhaps using the font for the author name as the title could work. I would experiment and try to get 5 or 10 different versions. You're going to keep hearing me say this over and over again because I love data and I love science. Experiment, experiment, experiment. Yes?
One of the things Brian Cohen taught me as a romance writer is that your blurb is not it's not your plot. It's not your synopsis.
Right, so what she's pointing out is you're not giving people a point by point, this is what the plot of the book is. Your goal with a blurb is to intrigue them with the story question and pull them that way. Is that more or less what you were saying? Okay, cool. All right, so the last thing that I want to do, we are running short on time, we're down to about 4 minutes. We're going to look at reviews, and this, I think, is one of the most powerful things you can do. Now, I didn't do this on Ira's book because he had 10 reviews, and I'm guessing they were all positive. We want to see some negative reviews. There's that internet again. So someday that's going to load. When it does, we are hopefully going to see some reviews. And if we could collectively hum Jeopardy, please. Perfect. Okay, what I'm seeing here is 31 positive reviews. Thanks, Internet. Not good, thanks, Richard. Okay, so what I'm seeing here is 31 positive reviews. I scrolled down and I looked at all of her reviews. And she has only, from what I can see, 1 3-star and 1 2-star, and the rest of them are all positive. Now, Teresa, do you have like an ARC reader team? Did you ask people for positive reviews, or are these organic?
There's 20 that are from ARC reviews.
Okay, so probably 11 that are organic, which means of those 11, you have 2 negative ones, which is a great ratio. So let's take a look at what the 2-star said. Come on, Internet. You can do it. It's not loading, I can't see what it says. Oh, this might actually be working. Alright, I'm taking Richard's phone. Okay, so the 2-star review says many punctuation errors, so irritating. Now, first let me start with, we all have reviews like this, so to be fair, we've all seen something similar in our own books. How accurate do you feel this is, Teresa? Like, are there errors in the first paragraph?
We had 20 ARC reviewers and an editor, and went over it several times ourselves, went back, looked after, got the review, didn't see anything.
Right, and what this says to me is it's isolated. Because we're not seeing a whole bunch of reviews that are, oh, your typos are all over the book. We're seeing one person do that. So it could be a statistical anomaly. If we had more reviews, we'd know for sure. But it is something to look at. It's unfortunately not teaching us a lot. Yes?
That review is interesting because the blurb does have those issues in it. It has 2 periods before the question mark. It has words capitalised and maybe shouldn't be capitalised. So that review would make me think when I look at the blurb, I'm not going to get that far because it will be the same.
Right, so I'm going to repeat that. So she said there were a couple of typos in the blurb, and so if there are typos in the blurb, it's reasonable to assume maybe they're in the text as well. So maybe those two things are linked. And obviously only the author can answer that, but it is something to be aware of. And if you saw a lot of these reviews, let's say there were 5 or 6 of them that were complaining about typos, then it would be time, I think, to take a step back and look and see whether or not there was a real problem. All of my books, every novel I've ever released, has had typos in it. And most of them, depending on genre, do get dinged for that. So something I'm familiar with. A question I have for you romance people, how much are your readers sticklers for this? So sci-fi fans are pretty forgiving of typos if there's only a few. Is it a little bit more strict in Regency romance? Okay. I see most people nodding yes. There are a few people saying no, but a lot of people kind of feel that it's important. So if that's the case, Teresa, maybe just revisit it and take a look at the first few pages and see if you can find something.
A lot of things that I saw with, because this is English, is I went back and forth. Do I use the UK spelling or do I use the US spelling? Because you get both ways.
Yeah, in programming we call that localization. She's not sure whether or not it should be aimed at England or at America when she's talking about language. And I think that comes down to looking at other similar books in the genre, picking one or the other, and always doing it that way. So if you mix and match, people are going to get upset, but as long as you're picking one, you should be fine. My little sign here says that I am out of time. So does anybody have any fast questions I can answer? I see a hand going up. There's a microphone right up here. Nice shirt, by the way. I like the Davey reference.
Yes, it suits me. I'm sure it's chaotic good for people who make kids. Yeah, I'm wondering what you might suggest for writers who have written a work that has ended up being cross-genre. Once the book is written, of course, besides the advice of, don't do that.
I think you can and should do that. The book that I just wrote is cross-genre, and that's sci-fi and fantasy kind of mixed together. Make it really, really, really clear on the cover what you're taking from each of the 2 genres. And if you've got 3 or more genres, pick the 2 dominant ones and don't really show the 3rd one. But you've got to show readers, like in my case, Tech Mage, I had to show technology and I had to show magic, and I had to do that on the cover. So if you can do that on both the cover and the blurb, that'll make it clear. What's really important is knowing the emotional resonance you're after. So when you say 2 genres, which are they?
Fantasy and satire.
Okay, then you're going to go for the fantasy base, and you're going to layer satire on top of it. I think that the satire needs to be really, really clear on your cover. So, choose a font that shows people, hey, this is going to be tongue-in-cheek, this is going to be funny. And if you can do that, you're going to get a lot more interest. Thank you. Sure. Any final questions? I see one more in the back there.
I'm just going to yell from back here. Resurrecting the dead, like the backlist. Like, you had a book, like the first book, it didn't do well, or you launched badly. Do you spend going the time and money or resources? Do you spend the time going ahead and trying to redo it and get it back, or bring it back to life, and just go forward and do something? What's a better use of your time?
The question from the back is whether or not it's worth going over a book that flopped and relaunching it and kind of putting more effort into it. How do you know when to do that? And the answer for me is always, am I still writing in the same genre? And how much effort would it take me? So if I screwed everything up like I did with No Such Thing as Werewolves, those books don't get any love from me at all. I have one $5 ad running on No Such Thing as Werewolves, and that's it. And I get a little bit of money each month for them. But because my sell-through is so low, I had to cut bait. I had to walk away and say, you know what, until I've got more time, I can't come back and clean up this series. I'm going to write some other stuff. So hopefully that answers your question. Yes?
I strongly recommend a book called Relaunch Your Novel.
Thanks, Tammy. For those that don't know, that's Tammy. That's my editor. I do pay her to say that. All right, well, I think we've got another presentation that's about to start, so I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate it.